Hi, everyone. We have a pre-recorded presentation here since not all of our presenters could be here at this time. Oh, I need to make sure that audio is on when I share. Okay, here we go. Hello, I'm Anna Headley. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a digital infrastructure developer at the Princeton University Library.
Hi, I'm Elliot Jordan. My pronouns are he, him, and I am a geospatial developer at Princeton University Library.
Hi, I'm Tanya. I am a class of 2023 majoring in computer science at Princeton, and I work as a part-time software developer for the Princeton University Library.
Hi, my name is Andrew Gardner, he, him pronouns. I am a part-time software developer for the library and a student in the class of 24.
And today we are going to share what we're doing at Princeton with integrating undergraduate students onto our development team. We'll talk about how we got this program started, how we're doing training, what mentorship and onboarding look like, and what we've learned so far. First, I'll talk about how the program was started. In 2019, a change in federal policy made it very difficult for international students to get the visas that they needed for the summer internships they had lined up. And departments around the university were asked to consider whether we could create positions for these students, since they would be able to work for Princeton under their student visas. So we quickly wrote a job description and held interviews. We were able to hire one student, but due to shifting circumstances, she started in the fall and worked with us during the academic year. This experience motivated us to design a more intentional program to provide development mentorship to undergraduates at our institution. So Elliot and I, along with Trey Pendragon, got approval to hire some undergraduates onto our team to work full-time during the summer and then part-time during the academic year. In 2020, we went through interviewing and had just extended offers to 2 undergraduates when, due to the pandemic, we were directed to cancel the student positions for the summer. In 2021, we successfully hired 3 people and they've now been working with us for 4 months. So Elliot will describe the hiring process that we followed.
Thanks, Anna. Next slide, please. So as Anna mentioned, we already had an existing job description, but this year we rewrote it to update in-person and remote work requirements, obviously because of COVID. But also we wanted to make sure that our job description was aligned with a new evaluation rubric that we created, and which I will talk about more in a minute. So once our job description was solidified, we needed to find a way to advertise the position to students. So we posted the job to the student employment website. Also, we asked the engineering department's undergraduate affairs administrator to advertise it via their listserv. And I think it was a pretty successful strategy. We received a total of 15 applications, and we interviewed 6 of those for the position. So our team has been through this hiring process 3 times now and has developed a set of interview practices that really work best for us. So the first of which is our evaluation rubric. So after each interview, we individually score the candidate from 1 to 5 in a range of categories. Then at the end, the scores are totaled and they inform our final decision. So these are the rubric assessment categories. We evaluate each candidate on problem-solving ability, code craft. These are things like organization, readability, testing, variable names, comments, things like that. Communication skills. These are really crucial to life on a mostly remote team like ours. The ability to work independently and also the ability to work collaboratively on a team, how curious and learning oriented the students are, and how much experience they have with our existing technology stack. And this is really to inform how much additional training will be required. And at the end, we have a category for bonus points. So that's anything not covered in the other categories that we want to add in there. So through the years that we've been doing this, one of the other interview practices that has been beneficial is the code sample. So we ask students to submit an example of their work along with the application. We each review the sample before the interview. And then during the interview, we spend about 15 minutes or so asking questions about the code. And we find this is a really good way to assess technical ability and communication skills. So I'd like to briefly touch on the interview process itself. So after an initial screening process, we identify candidates to bring in for an hour-long interview. And this is the interview agenda that we follow. And it seemed to work really well. We start with 5 minutes for introductions. Then we talk about the position for 5 minutes. And then each of the interviewers, us, prepares a set of general questions that we ask every candidate. And that takes about 20 minutes. We do the code sample review for 15 minutes. And then the remaining time is for the candidate to ask questions of us. All right, next, Anna and Tanya will talk about training.
Yeah, I'll first hand it off to Anna to talk about the mentor perspective of training.
Great. Most undergraduate computer science departments don't teach Ruby or JavaScript or HTML and CSS or test-driven development. And even database design is often missing or cursory. So we found that training on these skill areas at the same time as onboarding to our projects on our team is pretty difficult. And then doing all of this in 6 hours per week makes it pretty hard to achieve like a continuity and flow in terms of actually fully participating on our projects. So we wanted to use the summer for a full-time training program so that during the school year, when undergraduates can only work a limited number of hours, they already have a solid foundation in those skills that they need to participate on our projects. And then we can provide that additional project-specific context as we go along. So we wrote up a list of all the skills that we thought a developer would need to work on our projects. And then we made trial accounts with several different Learn to be a web developer services. We were looking for a program that offered the instructional content we needed with a good user interface, but wasn't a full bootcamp school with instructors and one-on-one services, because we wanted to supply our own mentorship and other small projects.
Yeah, and this full-time training program really set the library developer position apart from other internship opportunities where interns would have to learn the skills on the job. It gave us the chance to build a solid foundation in things like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and web accessibility that most people learn as they're developing as they go. Yeah, next slide, please. So we use 2 platforms for training. On the left is Treehouse, and most of our training happened via Treehouse because it had courses on almost all the skills we need to learn, from HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to Ruby and Ruby on Rails. And the learning format was also very practice focused. So we would watch videos on a new concept, then practice it in a in-browser code editor, and finally have a multiple choice quiz to check our understanding. On the right is LinkedIn Learning, which is the other platform we used. And we used it to learn about RSpec and Ruby testing in general, since Treehouse didn't have such a course. And the LinkedIn Learning involved watching videos on each type of spec and using downloadable exercise files to practice. Unlike Treehouse, LinkedIn Learning didn't have quizzes or coding exercises to check our understanding. So a lot of the practice was left up to us. Next slide, please. And so after we'd finish a set of courses on Treehouse or LinkedIn Learning, we'd practice what we learned with checkpoint projects. For example, after finishing Treehouse's JavaScript courses, we were tasked with creating an in-browser implementation of Connect 4. Using JavaScript, we had to keep track of the state of the game, handle user input, and then reflect these changes on the front end. And these tasks were things we learned how to do in isolation via Treehouse. But the checkpoint project really forced us to use them in combination as one would in a real application. And here you can see on the left is Xander's project, and on the right is my project. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, and so these projects were not only a way for us to apply what we were learning, but we're also practice in making our own design choices. Our CS classes often provide us with an API we need to implement or very specific guidelines. So it was a challenge to embark on these projects without some provided structure. For example, our final project required us to use Ruby on Rails to create an application with a database. How we structured this database, what kind of objects we created, and what our user interface looked like was completely up to us. And ultimately, I think the full-time training period was crucial in acclimating us to Princeton University Library's tech stack, but also in preparing us for future software development careers where test-driven development, design patterns, and databases would no doubt come into play. Next slide, please. And now I'll hand it off to Xander to talk about how we were onboarded.
Thank you. So one of the main goals for this program is to get student developers to become actual full members of the development team. And this was achieved through an onboarding process. Having a mentor was integral to both team integration and product onboarding. We each had one mentor who we met with daily over the summer. During the training curriculum, meetings were an opportunity to check in on progress and help answer any questions. When we were working on the checkpoint projects, the meetings were important for code review and ensuring that we were following the team's test-driven, ticket-based development process. After training, mentors helped with determining which tickets to pick up and would pair with us on these tickets. It was useful for understanding how the projects were put together from developers who have experience working on them. Throughout training and onboarding, mentoring was extremely important as there are many small things that you can only pick up from experience. These include tricks to solving tickets and using different tools to optimize the development environment. So during the summer, we were first integrated into the team by attending the developer meetings. These included the daily team meetings, the Monday maintenance meetings, and the Friday wrap-up meetings. During these meetings, we learned of the dependencies for different projects, what it means for an issue to be specified, how developers work together, aka pairing, on a ticket, and how the team sets up different maintenance boards for organizing work, and just a lot more. We also had a retrospective meeting between the student developers and their mentors about summer training, which focused on what went well and what could be improved. It served not only as a reflection, but also as an introduction to team retrospectives. Around this time, the student developers also met with developers who were not their mentors to hear their story and how they got where they are today. Our meetings throughout the summer prepared us with a basic understanding of the different products the team works on. After finishing the training curriculum and our final projects, we started working on tickets and we're learning about the details of the different projects with the help of our mentors.
And just to share some of the reflections and things we've learned so far about a program like this, we will just each go around and talk about some of our reflections. So I just wanted to say that one really important thing we did was creating and maintaining documentation of the whole process of hiring, interviewing, and training. That's been really useful as we've iterated on these processes and as we share what we've learned with other teams. It's just really helpful to say, it's all right here. Here you go, take a look.
So one thing that we discovered was that through the process of training, there's a lot of software tooling and kind of like repository boilerplate that we had to work through at the mentor-mentee level. And we realized it would be nice to have like a reference for these topics. So we created a GitHub repository called Rails template to hold examples for the way we do things like continuous integration, style checking, coverage reports. And then that provides a reference so we can go back and look and say, hey, this is how you add Circle CI to our projects and things like that. And I think it's not only a useful reference for our student workers, but also for us. Sometimes you forget how to do things, and for any other people we onboard to our team in the future.
Yeah, and then we also found some areas for improvement when it came to training. For one, we found that it might be useful to have a list of resources such as books, articles, or videos on software engineering generally. So some examples are Design Patterns by Christopher Laster or conference talks given by Sandy Metz. That way, we as students could start engaging in the process of continuous learning and research that software engineers do over their career. And additionally, we realized some frameworks or tools used in production weren't completely covered in training, such as Solar or Blacklight. To address this concern, we thought it might be helpful to have a checkpoint project involving Solar or Blacklight so that we as students could gain familiarity with those technologies before working on issues with them in production. But nonetheless, using the summer for training was really helpful in providing grounding and context to what we would be working on once the school year started. It made the transition to working on issues quite smooth, only requiring us to be onboarded to the specific context of the application in question.
So one other thing we have worked on changing is the official name of the student developer position to become part-time software developer. This name change will look better on the students' resumes and possibly bring in more applicants to the program. We also plan to continue to hire more than one undergrad at a time. So we as student developers found that it was very helpful to have someone sort of at the same level to ask questions.
That is everything. So thank you very much for your attention today. And I think we do have some time for questions. Tanya's here, I'm here, and Elliot is here. So we're happy to use whatever time we have.
Yes, indeed. We have at least about 10 minutes here, and I don't see any questions in Slack yet or the Zoom Q&A.
I'd be very interested in hearing if other folks are have undergrads on your team too. So chat us in Slack for sure.
Okay, 2 questions have come in. So first one, there's a lot to learn in one summer. Did you find yourself going back to repeat in quotes training?
I think that question is for me. Yeah, there were definitely multiple times where we covered something during the courses, and then I would have to revisit them. Even currently, while we were learning HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, at the time, I felt like I had a very good foundation in JavaScript, but since most of the work we actually do is in Ruby and Ruby on Rails, while I'm fixing issues or bugs or visual design problems with Ruby on Rails applications, I have like some trouble remembering, oh, what was, how did I implement this in JavaScript? Like, what's the bug? What's the bug in the Sass? Because these were things we had covered so early on in the training period. Now that we've got through so much material, it's less fresh in my mind. So yeah, there were definitely some topics I had to keep going over. Some notes I had to take on commands like running Rubocop for RSpec to refresh myself.
Thank you, Tanya. And next question, are the internships paid, and does the summertime training fit into a paid model?
Go ahead, Elliot.
I was gonna say yes, they're paid. The summer and the fall portions are both paid.
Yeah, and we always try to remind the undergrads on our team, like, don't do this in your spare time. This is part of your job. um, we really wanted to make sure that that was a big part of the program.
Nice. One comment that at UCSB, they do have undergrad intern on their team. Answering your question earlier, Anna, and then actually at Notre Dame, we've had some in the past as well, and that is something that I'm hoping to revitalize. So this is a very timely presentation. Thank you.
Great. I look forward to hearing how y'all do.
All right, looking to see if there's any last questions. We may be able to break a little bit early and have a few minutes before the random conversations session at 2 o'clock. I see someone typing, so I'll hold off on a moment here. Okay, a question came in, any pairing?
Do you want to take that, Tanya?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think while we were doing the checkpoint projects, there was some pairing, but that became even more crucial when we started working on the actual code base that the library was using for different applications. I've definitely worked on multiple GitHub tickets where I had no idea what was like happening because it would be a small part of this much larger application. And Anna and Trey and Elliot were always there. Like if any of the interns had questions, even if that wasn't our direct mentor, we could ask any of them questions if we were confused or if there was something we weren't sure about in the larger code base. And then also pairing was really helpful for being sure when I think as like software engineers or like incoming software engineers, we're still learning our place in these new code bases. So there were a lot of moments where I wasn't sure, should I be removing this? Am I like I didn't have confidence in changing a specific part of the code. So pairing was really helpful for being sure, oh, this is a good change in the code. Yeah.
Another thing I would often do with my mentees is do the code review as a pair session. So look through the code together, talk about everything as we go through it, and then, you know, put my comment in the formal code review system in GitHub, but know that we've already like discussed it and decided together what to do moving forward.
Okay, one more question. After going through this, do you feel ahead of your peers? I think this is again for Tanya.
Yeah, definitely. I think I got to learn a lot about different practical technologies that they're not really teaching us in our coursework, from JavaScript to web accessibility to RSpec. And so from a technical skill point of view, I feel farther ahead than a lot of my peers who are like currently learning them in a CS course. And then also from in terms of learning what I want out of a workplace has been really important. Being able to talk to, in terms of mentorship, I got the chance to talk to a lot of the developers on the team who are later in their career. So they've been through a couple different workplaces, a couple different workplace difficulties. So really learning what I want out of a workplace has been helpful when I interview for internships and then also potentially new grad roles and what questions I ask and the expectations I have out of a future career. So it's been good. I feel ahead technically and then also in terms of what I want out of a software engineering career.